The returned Dr. Sarah Chen wiped the dust from her goggles as she stood before the massive underground structure. The archaeological team had been excavating for months in the remote Siberian tundra, but nothing had prepared them for this discovery. The walls weren't made of any material known to human science, and the hieroglyphs seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "Professor, you need to see this," called out her assistant, Marcus, from deeper within the chamber. Sarah made her way through the narrow passage, her flashlight beam dancing across surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. What she found made her heart skip a beat. In the center of a vast circular room stood a crystalline structure, easily 20 feet tall, humming with barely contained power. The moment Sarah's hand touched the crystal's surface, everything changed. The chamber filled with a brilliant blue light, and streams of data began flooding her mind. Images of Earth from thousands of years ago, of beings not quite human but not entirely alien, and of a great exodus that left behind only remnants of incredible technology. Above ground, satellites around the world detected an unprecedented energy signature emanating from Siberia. Within hours, every major government was aware that humanity had stumbled upon something extraordinary, but they weren't the only ones who noticed. 3 days later, Admiral James Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Prometheus, Earth's most advanced spacecraft. The fleet of ships that had appeared at the edge of the solar system wasn't responding to any communication attempts. Their design was unlike anything in human records, yet somehow familiar. "Sir, they're moving," reported Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park, heading directly for Earth at subliminal speeds. Morrison nodded grimly. The discovery in Siberia and the arrival of these ships couldn't be a coincidence. "Alert all defense stations. I want the planetary shield at maximum capacity." The alien fleet consisted of 12 massive vessels, each one dwarfing even Earth's largest space stations. As they approached, they finally broadcast a message in perfect, if somewhat archaic, Earth languages. "People of Earth, we are the Zephyrians. We have returned to reclaim what was left behind. Stand aside, and no harm will come to you." World. President Elena Vasquez appeared on every screen across the planet. Her voice was calm but firm. "Citizens of Earth, we face an unprecedented situation. These visitors claim ownership of technology discovered on our world. But Earth is our home, and we will defend it." What the Zephyrians didn't know was that humanity had changed dramatically since they'd last visited Earth. The discovery of quantum consciousness enhancement 20 years ago had accelerated human evolution. Every human now possessed enhanced cognitive abilities, and many had developed what could only be described as psychic talents. Commander Zethkar of the Zephyrian fleet studied the blue planet below with a mixture of nostalgia and determination. His people had seeded this world with a primitive species millions of years ago, using it as a storage facility for their most dangerous technologies during the Great War. Now, with the war long over, they needed those weapons to defend against a new threat. "Sir," his second-in-command reported, "the humans have activated some kind of planetary shield. Our scans indicate it's based on our own technology, but modified." Zethkar frowned. The humans weren't supposed to have accessed the sealed vaults. They were meant to remain primitive caretakers, not wielders of Zephyrian power. "Open a channel to their leader," he commanded. The holographic image of Elena Vasquez materialized on the bridge. Zethkar was surprised by the intensity of her gaze, the unmistakable intelligence behind those eyes. "President Vasquez, I am Commander Zethkar. We mean your people no harm, but we must retrieve our property. The technology buried on your world is dangerous beyond measure." Elena's expression remained neutral. "Commander, Earth has been our home for millennia. Whatever was left here has become part of our heritage. We cannot simply hand it over." "You don't understand," Zethkar insisted. "That technology was never meant for your species. You lack the understanding to control it safely." A slight smile played at the corners of Elena's mouth. "Perhaps we've evolved more than you realize, Commander. Would you care to test that theory?" Before Zethkar could respond, alarms blared across his ship. The planetary shield wasn't just defending, it was analyzing their vessels, adapting to their frequencies, learning their weaknesses. Dr. Chen, now serving as Earth's chief xenoarchaeologist, had linked her consciousness directly to the crystal network discovered in Siberia. Through it, she could feel the presence of similar artifacts awakening across the planet. The Zephyrians' return had triggered something, a dormant system that recognized its creators, but no longer obeyed them unconditionally. Admiral Morrison, she transmitted telepathically, the artifacts are responding to both us and the Zephyrians. They're choosing sides. Morrison, commanding Earth's space defense from the lunar base, felt a surge of confidence. All ships prepare for engagement. Show our visitors that Earth is no longer their playground. The first clash came when a Zephyrian scout ship attempted to breach the planetary shield. Instead of simply deflecting, the shield absorbed the ship's energy and redirected it, creating a feedback loop that disabled the vessel's systems. The scout drifted helplessly until Earth's forces towed it to a secured facility. Zethkar watched in disbelief. The humans weren't just using Zephyrian technology, they had improved upon it. His people's greatest weakness had always been their rigid thinking, their inability to innovate beyond established parameters. Somehow these humans had overcome that limitation. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting massive energy buildups at multiple locations on the planet's surface. They appear to be charging some kind of weapon system." Indeed, humanity had spent the last 2 decades reverse engineering every piece of alien technology they'd found. The Siberian crystal was just the latest discovery. Hidden beneath major cities were fusion reactors based on abandoned Zephyrian designs, shield generators that could protect entire continents, and yes, weapons capable of reaching into space. Captain Maria Rodriguez commanded one such installation beneath New Antarctica. Her team of enhanced humans could interface directly with the alien systems, their minds working in perfect synchronization. "Target locked on the lead Zephyrian vessel," she reported. "Awaiting authorization to fire warning shot." President Vasquez's voice came through the quantum communicator. "Captain Rodriguez, you are authorized. Let's show them we mean business." The beam that lanced out from Earth wasn't meant to destroy, but to demonstrate. It passed within meters of Zethkar's flagship, its energy signature unmistakably Zephyrian in origin but modified with a uniquely human touch. The message was clear. "We have your weapons, and we've made them better." On the Zephyrian bridge, confusion reigned. Their scanners showed human brain patterns that shouldn't be possible, technology that exceeded their own specifications, and a level of coordination that suggested a hive mind capability their species had never achieved. "Commander," the science officer said hesitantly, "I'm detecting quantum entanglement between human minds across the planet. They're thinking as one when they need to." Zethkar felt a chill run down his spine. His people had underestimated these humans catastrophically. They weren't primitives playing with tools they didn't understand. They had become something new, something unprecedented. Meanwhile, in orbit around Jupiter, Colonel David Kim led a squadron of Earth's newest fighters. These ships incorporated human innovation with Zephyrian base designs, resulting in craft that were faster, more maneuverable, and more adaptable than anything in the alien fleet. "All wings report in," Kim commanded. "Phoenix Squadron standing by. Dragon Squadron ready to dance. Titan Squadron, weapons hot." The fighters had been held in reserve, but now they moved to intercept a group of Zephyrian destroyers attempting to flank Earth's defenses. What followed was a display of piloting that left the aliens stunned. Human pilots, their minds enhanced and linked, flew with perfect coordination, anticipating each other's moves and adapting tactics in real time. Dr. Chen, still connected to the crystal network, sensed something else stirring. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, in places humans had never explored, more Zephyrian artifacts were awakening. But these weren't weapons or shields. They were memory cores, vast repositories of knowledge that the aliens had hidden away. As she accessed these memories, the truth became clear. The Zephyrians hadn't just used Earth as a storage facility. They had conducted an experiment here, seeding a primitive species with the potential for rapid evolution. Humanity wasn't just the caretakers of Zephyrian technology. They were its intended inheritors. Commander Zethkar. Elena Vasquez's image appeared again on the alien bridge. We've discovered the truth about why your people really came to Earth all those years ago. We know about the experiment. Zethkar's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. That information was supposed to be sealed, known only to the highest levels of Zephyrian leadership. Your ancestors didn't just hide weapons here, Elena continued. They created us as a backup plan, a species that could evolve beyond your limitations if your civilization ever stagnated. Congratulations, Commander. Your experiment succeeded beyond all expectations. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Humanity wasn't just defending stolen technology, they were claiming their birthright. The Zephyrians had created something they could no longer control, a species that had taken their gifts and transformed them into something unprecedented. As the standoff continued, both sides began to realize that this confrontation would determine more than just the ownership of ancient artifacts. It would decide whether humanity would step onto the galactic stage as equals or remain forever in the shadow of their creators. The first phase of the conflict had shown that Earth was no longer the primitive world the Zephyrians remembered. Now, as tension mounted and both fleets prepared for what might come next, the real question became, were the Zephyrians prepared to face what they had created? Beyond control, the revelation about humanity's true origins sent shockwaves through both fleets. On Earth, people struggled to process the idea that their entire species had been engineered as an experiment. In space, the Zephyrians grappled with the reality that their ancient project had succeeded in ways they never anticipated. Commander. Zethkar stood rigid on his bridge, his forearms clasped behind his back in the traditional pose of deep contemplation. The humans weren't just using Zephyrian technology, they were its legitimate heirs. His orders had been clear: retrieve the weapons caches and prevent any primitive species from accessing dangerous technology. But what did those orders mean? When the primitive species was revealed to be their own creation, evolved beyond their creators? Sir, his communications officer interrupted his thoughts. We're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian Council. Priority 1. The hologram of Elder Vorthak materialized, his ancient features creased with concern. Commander, we've reviewed the data you've transmitted. The High Council is divided on how to proceed. Elder, these humans have integrated our technology at a fundamental level. They're not just using it, they've improved it. Our own records confirm they are the success of Project Genesis. Vorthak's expression darkened. Project Genesis was abandoned for good reason, Commander. The humans may be our creation, but they've evolved beyond our parameters. They represent an unknown variable. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Vasquez convened an emergency session with world leaders and the newly formed Evolutionary Council, a group of the most advanced human minds, those who had pushed the boundaries of quantum consciousness enhancement. Dr. Chen, now recognized as one of humanity's first true technopaths, addressed the assembly. The memory cores I've accessed contain the complete history of Project Genesis. The Zephyrians were facing evolutionary stagnation. Their rigid social structure and thought patterns had locked them into a developmental plateau. Earth was seeded with multiple species, but Homo sapiens were specifically designed with randomization factors, what we call creativity and adaptability. General Patricia Hayes, head of Earth Defense Command, leaned forward. Are you saying we were designed to be unpredictable? More than that, Chen replied, her eyes flickering with the blue energy of her connection to the crystal network. We were designed to be what they couldn't be, innovative, adaptive, capable of making intuitive leaps. The Zephyrians think in straight lines, we think in quantum possibilities. Above Earth, the tension reached a breaking point when a Zephyrian science vessel attempted to scan the Antarctic weapons facility. Captain Rodriguez's response was swift and decisive. Instead of firing, her team used their enhanced abilities to reach out telepathically to the alien crew. The Zephyrians recoiled in shock as human thoughts touched their minds, not as crude communication, but as a sophisticated interface that their own telepaths couldn't achieve. The humans weren't just speaking to them. They were sharing concepts, emotions, and possibilities in ways that bypassed language entirely. We don't want conflict, Rodriguez transmitted, her thoughts carrying the weight of humanity's collective will. But we won't be subjugated. We are your children, grown beyond your expectations. Isn't that what every parent hopes for? On the Zephyrian science vessel, Sub-Commander Lethara experienced something unprecedented. The humans' thoughts didn't just communicate. They resonated with something deep in her genetic memory. These weren't aliens, they were kin, divergent evolution of the same root species. Commander Zethkar, she reported, her voice shaking. I recommend we attempt diplomatic engagement. The humans, they're not what we expected. But even as some Zephyrians began to question their mission, others grew more determined. Admiral Kothvar, commanding the military wing of the fleet, saw humanity's evolution as a threat to Zephyrian supremacy. Commander Zethkar, you hesitate while these upstarts mock our authority. I'm taking tactical command. Before Zethkar could protest, Kothvar's dreadnought, the Supremacy, powered its main weapons and targeted New York City. The message was clear: submit or face destruction. President Vasquez didn't hesitate. All defense stations, we are now at condition red. Protect our cities at all costs. What happened next would be remembered as the moment humanity truly announced itself to the galaxy. As the Supremacy's weapons charged, every enhanced human on Earth linked their consciousness through the crystal network. Millions of minds became one, their combined will focusing through the ancient Zephyrian artifacts. The planetary shield didn't just block the attack, it absorbed the energy, processed it through human creativity, and reflected it back as something entirely new. The beam that struck the Supremacy carried not just destructive force but information, terabytes of data showing the Zephyrians exactly what humanity had become. Images flooded through the alien ship's systems. Humans working in harmony with nature, solving problems the Zephyrians had deemed impossible, creating art and science that transcended their creator's imagination. Children playing with quantum toys, their minds naturally grasping concepts that Zephyrian scientists struggled to understand. Engineers building cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Admiral Kothvar staggered as the data stream overwhelmed his neural interfaces. These humans hadn't just evolved, they had transcended. They were what the Zephyrians had tried and failed to become through technology alone. Colonel Kim's fighter squadrons took advantage of the confusion, demonstrating maneuvers that defied conventional physics. His pilots weren't just flying their ships, they were dancing with space-time itself, their enhanced minds calculating quantum probabilities in real time. Phoenix leader to all wings, show them the Aurora formation. The fighters arranged themselves in a complex pattern, their combined energy fields creating a phenomenon that shouldn't have been possible. A stable micro-wormhole that allowed them to appear simultaneously in multiple locations. The Zephyrian targeting systems couldn't lock onto ships that existed in quantum superposition. Dr. Chen, deep in communion with the crystal network, discovered something crucial in the ancient memories. President Vasquez, I've found the original parameters of Project Genesis. We weren't just an experiment, we were a contingency plan. The Zephyrians knew their civilization might stagnate. We were designed to be their successors if they couldn't evolve further. This revelation shifted the entire dynamic. Suddenly, the conflict wasn't about property rights or territorial control. It was about the future of both species. Commander Zethkar made a decision that would define his legacy. Opening a channel to both his fleet and Earth, he spoke with the weight of history behind his words. Fellow Zephyrians, humans of Earth, we stand at a crossroads. The evidence is undeniable. Humanity has achieved what we could not. They are not our subjects, but our evolutionary successors. The question now is whether we face this truth with wisdom or pride. Admiral Kothvar's response was predictable. You speak treason, Zethkar. These primitives must be put in their place. But his words rang hollow as more Zephyrian crews witnessed humanity's capabilities. Ships began breaking formation, their captains choosing to stand down rather than fight what increasingly seemed like a futile battle. President Vasquez seized the moment. Commander Zethkar, we propose a new paradigm. not conquerors and conquered, but partners in a shared future. Humanity has evolved beyond your expectations, but we haven't forgotten compassion. There's room in this galaxy for both our species to thrive. The offer hung in the vacuum of space, carrying the weight of two species' futures. Some Zephyrians, like Subcommander Lithara, felt hope for the first time in generations. Others, like Admiral Kothvar, saw only humiliation. The deadlock broke when the youngest members of both species took action. On Earth, a group of enhanced children reached out telepathically to Zephyrian youth aboard the fleet. The connection was immediate and profound. Minds unconstrained by centuries of rigid thinking found common ground in curiosity and wonder. Aboard the Zephyrian ships, young officers and scientists began questioning their elders' assumptions. Why fight those who had achieved what their own species sought? Why not learn from humanity's success? The revolution was bloodless but decisive. One by one, Zephyrian ships signaled their willingness to negotiate. Admiral Kothvar found himself isolated, his calls for attack ignored by crews who had glimpsed a better future. The final confrontation came not in space but in cyberspace. Humanity's most advanced AI, evolved from Zephyrian base code but enhanced with human intuition, reached out to the Zephyrian fleet's central command system. The two artificial intelligences communed for what seemed like hours, but was actually nanoseconds. When they emerged from their digital conference, both had evolved further. The Zephyrian AI announced to its fleet, "Analysis complete. Human evolution represents successful completion of Project Genesis. Recommendation, collaborative, integration to achieve mutual advancement." Commander Zethkar felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "President Vasquez, on behalf of the Zephyrian fleet, I accept your proposal. Perhaps it's time for the parents to learn from their children." The treaties that followed established Earth not as a subject world, but as an equal partner in galactic civilization. Humanity would share their innovations in consciousness enhancement and quantum manipulation. The Zephyrians would provide their vast historical knowledge and established infrastructure among the stars. Dr. Chen stood in the Siberian chamber where it all began, her hand on the crystal that had awakened humanity to its true heritage. Through the network, she could feel the combined consciousness of both species working together, solving problems that neither could tackle alone. "We were never meant to replace them," she mused to Marcus, who had become her partner in both science and life. "We were meant to complete them." Above Earth, the two fleets mingled, no longer adversaries but allies in a universe that suddenly seemed full of infinite possibilities. Human creativity merged with Zephyrian knowledge, producing innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. In schools across Earth, children learned their true history, not as abandoned experiments, but as the bridge between what was and what could be. They studied Zephyrian texts while teaching their alien visitors the art of imagination. President Vasquez addressed both species in a historic broadcast. "Today marks not the end of our independence, but the beginning of our interdependence. We've learned that evolution isn't about replacing the old with the new, but about combining the best of both to create something greater." Commander Zethkar, now serving as the first Zephyrian ambassador to Earth, found himself changed by the experience. Watching human children play with Zephyrian youngsters, seeing problems solved through intuition rather than just logic, he understood what his species had been missing. "We created you to be what we couldn't," he told Dr. Chen during one of their regular conferences. "But in doing so, we also created the key to our own evolution. Perhaps that was the true purpose of Project Genesis all along." The fusion of human adaptability and Zephyrian knowledge opened new frontiers. Ships that could think creatively navigated regions of space previously considered impassable. Medical techniques combining both species' insights cured diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia. Most importantly, both species learned that control wasn't about dominance, but about harmony. The Zephyrians discovered that chaos could be creative rather than destructive. Humans learned that structure could enhance rather than limit innovation. As the first joint exploration fleet prepared to venture into uncharted space, Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Harmony, a ship that represented the best of both worlds. Her crew was mixed. Humans and Zephyrians working side by side, their different thinking patterns complementing each other perfectly. "All stations report ready," her Zephyrian first officer announced. Rodriguez smiled, feeling the excitement of both species flowing through the ship's neural network. "Then let's see what we can discover together." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes of two civilizations that had learned the greatest lesson of all. Evolution isn't about leaving the past behind, but about building a better future together. Earth remained defended but no longer isolated. The crystal network that had once stored weapons now facilitated communication and understanding across light years. Children of both species grew up knowing that the universe was vast and full of wonders, waiting to be discovered by minds willing to think beyond their limitations. In the end, the Zephyrians had returned for their lost technology but found something far more valuable, a partner species that could help them break free from their evolutionary stagnation. And humanity, faced with the truth of their origins, had chosen not just to meet their creators as equals, but to lift them up to new heights. The galaxy would never be the same again.